Hey guys, I'm back. Okay, page 453. What do you think, bro? Other aspects of LaGuardia's character also made the friendly drinks with Moses as inevitable as the wild altercations. There was the little mayor's romantic streak, the side of him that was the dreamer, dreaming of making his city beautiful. His dreams for the beautification were vast but vague, and no one appreciated better than he the enormous difficulty in filling the vague outline of a magnificent metropolis with specific plans, and then in obtaining the money, the chisel and the brush that would allow him to turn the plans into reality. And it was Moses who was enabling him to obtain the plans and the money. An astonishing number of LaGuardia's dreams were being realized. By 1936, New York City was receiving 1/7 of the WPA allotment for the entire country. And the mayor knew who was responsible. He must have known every time he went down to Washington for one of the frequent mayors' conferences called by the WPA. There would be hundreds of mayors there, and most of them would have come with grandiose plans. But when they were confronted with the blunt question of the Army engineers, WPA Chief Harry Hopkins, so when they were confronted with the blunt questions of that guy, they had to confess that the blueprints were not ready, or the specifications were not ready, or the topographical surveys weren't ready. LaGuardia watched many of them walk out of conferences humiliated and without the money they were asking for. But he had the blueprints. He had specifications. He had topographical surveys. He had every piece of paper that even the hardest-eyed Army engineer could desire. And he had them because of Moses. Other municipalities were so unequal to the task of planning public works programs of size that in October 1938, the WPA would cancel more than 100 major grants approved for 11 northeastern cities 3 years before, because the blueprints for those projects were still not ready. But Moses' engineers would come walking up the front steps of City Hall with blueprints piled high in their arms. President Roosevelt's friendship was indispensable to LaGuardia's dreams, but no more indispensable than the tools Moses gave him to make use of it. And Moses, the skillful manipulator of men, found plenty in LaGuardia to manipulate. There was, for example, the mayor's boundless enthusiasm for engineering and engineers. Moses played on this feeling. He was constantly pressing LaGuardia to accompany him on inspection tours of construction sites. And with his great gift for words, his sense of drama, and his squads of engineers who would follow the mayoral limousine in a second car so that they could leap out at a project site, elaborate artist renderings in hand, and show the mayor what the project would look like when completed. He made these tours wonderfully exciting to a man who, quote, stood out like a child in front of the simplest engineering feat. Once the little mayor was so anxious to see the work on the Thomas Jefferson Park swimming pool that when he found the gate locked and no one around to open it, he chinned himself on the fence like a little boy so that he could see over the top. I always could tell when Moses had been taking him around, Windels recalls. He would be absolutely bubbling over with enthusiasm. He was just thrilled. Aw, he just should have been an engineer. If Moses was putting on one of the greatest engineering shows in the history of civilization, moreover, he made sure LaGuardia had a ringside seat. For example, on the day that the 2,200-ton vertical lift span that comprised the Harlem River arm of the Triborough Bridge was to be set into place, the mayor was standing on Randall's Island in the very shadow of the tower that, along with its twin on the Manhattan shore, would hold the span. And when the span was finally set in place, he said breathlessly, "This is the most thrilling moment I have had since being mayor." I congratulate the authority, the engineers, the contractors, and every man who has had a part in this magnificent piece of work. Moments like this make up for many heartaches and disappointments. The fact, which astonished him when he learned it, that Moses had never gone to engineering school, did not prevent him from gushing on several occasions. Robert Moses is the greatest engineer in the world. Can you believe that? He wanted Moses' admiration. He was jealous of the only man who really had it. Moses recalls that when the mayor was mad at me, which was not infrequent, I would say, the only boss you ever had whom you really respected was Al Smith. What's he got that I don't have? Moses recalls that, quote, I always answered that I admired both of them, but thought Smith a better executive, because he always stood behind his subordinates. LaGuardia's predilection for pageantry, preferably with himself at the center, was obvious to anyone who noticed the yards of gold braid with which the mayor outfitted his policeman bodyguard, or his penchant for holding full-dress military-type inspections of anything that could conceivably be inspected. Police or firemen with motorized equipment, snowplows, new garbage trucks, old garbage trucks, and for preening and strutting as he marched in front of them, literally swelling out his barrel chest as he bounced by at the salute. Moses, he should be like, I feel like LaGuardia would be so good playing himself in a movie, or like just playing the mayor in a movie. Moses played on this predilection. He gave the major pageantry such as no mayor had. We're calling him Major. He gave the Major, LaGuardia, pageantry such as no mayor had ever enjoyed in democratic America. Moses was opening playgrounds at a fantastic rate. 60 in 1934, 71 in 35, 72 in 1936, 52 in 1937. LaGuardia was present at most opening ceremonies, and these were ceremonies with the Moses touch. For the opening of a small playground on 17th Street between 8th and 9th Avenues, for example, nearby tenements were draped in red, white, and blue, not crepe paper streamers, but immense triangular, I do not know what this word means, penons, Penons. I'm looking that up. It's just a pennant. Speaking of pennants, if you want an illustration, I do have to get I have to go get my coffee from the kitchen. But as a demonstration of a pennant, here's a Wikipedia pennant that I recently got. Also, sorry, I'm taking a little 1 minute break because my coffee got done brewing. Hello. Yeah, he would have been a great character on Parks and Rec. Recently, I in the Wikipedia Discord, it was mostly me chatting about this, but we were talking about like who on Parks and Rec would be a good Wikipedia editor, and we were saying that I don't know. I think Leslie would be really good, but then she would just like go a little off the rails. I think she'd have like some issue. Like she'd be like, I want to make a Wikipedia article about every plot of Land and Pawnee, and then people would delete it, and she would get mad, and then maybe make her own copy of Wikipedia or something. Sorry, that wasn't actually a very good anecdote. Sorry, but I got my coffee and everything. Okay. Okay, so we're opening this playground. Flower pots containing 25,000 chrysanthemums made a bright ring around the playground fence. Flags were everywhere. The whole scene gleamed with the reflection of the hot summer sunlight off the polished brindles and curried satiny flanks of mounted policemen's horses, the polished brass and buttons of platoons of green-clad Park Department guards, the trumpets and tubas of Park Department and American Legion bands. Oh my, oh, are you kidding me? Okay, not only is there a sanitation department band, but there's a park department band. I can't believe I didn't bother to look up if they still exist because I don't want to know. I hope they still exist. That's so funny. I want to see the schedule of like where the sanitation band played and the parks department band, but that one's less exciting. I want to know like were they just like I don't know, like oh look at this great garbage truck. We're gonna bring our band there. Okay, anyway, as the mayor's limousine pulled up to the curb between rows of rigidly erect policemen at the salute, a smartly uniformed park department guard swung open its door, and as the mayor bounced out, followed by the gold braid of his bodyguard, the bands broke into a tune, incredibly Hail to the Chief. And when he reached the white painted, bunting draped speaker's platform, he found he was the only speaker, except for Moses, who confined himself to a very brief recitation of playground statistics. Oh, okay. Moses just listed playground statistics. And so LaGuardia was the only speaker. Sorry. Okay. Moses confined himself to playground statistics and then said, I now introduce the mayor of the city of New York, a performance that led LaGuardia to comment later that Moses was the ideal master of ceremonies. At the precise instant at which the applause passed its crescendo and began to fade away after LaGuardia's speech, which had been delivered at a lectern custom built by park department carpenters so that the little mayor wouldn't be forced to stretch to reach the microphone, it was punctuated by a hiss at the center fountain in the waiting pool was turned on full blast, dramatically filling the air with sprays of water and eliciting a gratifying ooh from hundreds of children waiting behind a ribbon. And when the mayor advanced to cut the ribbon and allow the children to rush into the spray, he found that it was no ordinary ribbon, but a braided and tasseled strand, colored red, white, and blue, and the shears held out to him by a little girl from the neighborhood were sterling silver shears resting on a cushion of royal purple velvet. Then the mayor jumped back into his limousine for a trip that was an adventure in itself. Fiorello LaGuardia's dashes across the city, limousine siren wailing, police on motorcycles clearing the path, were not trips for the faint-hearted. And when the mayor arrived at the other playgrounds, he found again chrysanthemums, flags, men on horseback, polished brass, and buttons, bands, hail to the chief, every detail that had made the first opening so exciting. Plus, often, new inspirations. At a playground being opened in Brooklyn's Red Hook section, whose most famous landmark was the Gowanus House, around which a Revolutionary War battle had been fought, a large painting of the Gowanus house had been placed as a backdrop behind the speaker's platform. The neighborhood was predominantly Italian, and as the mayor walked onto the platform, 2 aerial bombs were shot into the air, releasing parachutes that floated above the playground site. And attached to one parachute was an American flag, to the other, the tricolor of the House of Savoy. On some days, LaGuardia would open as many as 15 playgrounds scattered across the face of the great city, turning the occasion into a triumphal tour of his domain, speeding behind his helmeted outriders across the reaches of the bridge-connected boroughs, and then leaping into a launch. Whoa, Pearl was leaping right as I said leaping. And then leaping into a launch to bring his presence even to the colony on Staten Island. I think that if I were the mayor, opening the parks, like doing a playground opening ceremony, I think that would be like the best part of the job. I really can't think of anything that would be better than that, than being like, hello neighborhood, here's a great park. And to do 15 in a day is kind of amazing. Every ceremony would be perfect in every detail, or, parentheses, almost every detail. At one dedication in an Italian neighborhood, held before Moses was acquainted with LaGuardia's views on organ grinders, Moses had several, along with their hurdy-gurdies and monkeys, on hand to entertain the children, and LaGuardia sat on the platform, glowering out from under the brim of his big hat. Okay, I don't really know what an organ grinder is. I feel like I need to look it up. It's a street musician that plays a hand organ. You've definitely seen what they look like before. I just didn't know that it had a name. Okay. And the pageantry Moses arranged for the little flower was not limited to playground openings. It included the annual Christmas tree lighting ceremony in City Hall Park, complete with the program of instrumental music and carol singing, and a switch that the mayor threw to light up a 60-foot spruce. It included the dedication of the baseball diamond complex in Alley Pond Park, at which LaGuardia, after a series of fantastic contortions on the pitcher's mound, got to throw the first pitch to a batter who happens to be Babe Ruth. That is I should have expected that there would be a Babe Ruth cameo in this book because it's the 30s, but still fun. The Bambino, swinging with something less than his usual gusto, possibly because he was almost doubled over with laughter, hit a pop fly that dropped to the ground in the vicinity of second base. Moses made a place for LaGuardia in every major park department event. 1936, Fortune magazine said in an article on Moses, was the swimming pool year. Oh, what a portentous first sentence of a paragraph. I'm so excited for the pool section. 1936 was swimming pool year. Everyone's been saying it. The 10 giant neighborhood swimming pools were completed that summer, and Moses opened one a week for 10 weeks. Of a size, that's crazy because right now in New York, there are not that many pools. It's like, I feel like I'm just throwing this out there, but I feel like there's only like 10. Okay, anyway, public pools. Of a size previously unimagined in swimming pools, one was 330 feet long and 165 feet wide. They brought the joys of swimming to city-bound children and parents by the tens of thousands. Moses' passion for swimming led him to take a special interest in these pools, and he drove the engineers responsible for their design to invent filtering plants of new efficiency and underwater lighting that made them revolutionary developments in recreation. Henry Hopkins called the Astoria pool the finest pool in all the world, and Moses exerted all his genius as a showman to make each opening the most memorable event in the history of the neighborhood in which it was located. A parade led by local political leaders and local American Legion, high school, and Knights of Columbus bands would wind through the neighborhood beforehand, generally in the early evening, since the openings were held at night so that the underwater lighting would be more spectacular, attracting tens of thousands of residents. After neighborhood priests had blessed the clear waters, chlorinated, of the pools, there would be swimming races and diving competitions by neighborhood youngsters and by Olympic stars imported from all over the United States. I have so many. I'm very interested in all of this. I'm so interested. Okay, I'm just interested in the history of swimming pools. Like when chlorinated was marked as like, oh, that's a big deal. I'm like, wait, when did that start? Because it feels so unintuitive, even today, to put bleach in a pool and to be like, yeah, it's good now. It's all safe. Yeah, you might get headaches if you swim a lot in the chlorine, but it's fine. So yeah, I'm surprised. Like, I'm just curious whose idea that was. When did that start? Maybe I'll look it up in a little bit. Oh, wow. Okay, so they would import Olympians. Guess who else they would import? You're not going to guess. A team of, quote, swimming clowns. Oh, I need more about this. I need more info about this. Each opening, moreover, would be tailored to the neighborhood in which the pool was located. Moses arranged that opening ceremonies for the Colonial Park pool in Harlem included an exhibition by Bojangles' Bill Robinson, identified by the Times as a tap dancer, a rendition of the Battle Hymn of the Republic by black tenor Roland Hayes, accompanied by the 369th Regiment Band, and community singing. But center stage at each opening was reserved for Fiorello H. LaGuardia. It was he who pulled the switch that turned on the underwater lighting, an event that never failed to bring a murmur of oohs from the crowd. It was he who gave the word to raise the flag, and it was he who got to cut the ribbon and shout to the waiting children, "Okay, kids, it's all yours." Moses saw to it that one playground at the Williamsburg Bridge Plaza was named the Fiorello H. LaGuardia Playground. Quote, "The best thing about the playground is its name," he wrote the mayor. Okay, I'm just gonna quick pause because I just simply need to know a little bit more about like pools. I'm just gonna go on the Wikipedia article for swimming pool really quick. And also chlorination. Like I'm just kind of maybe sorry if everyone knows this already. And I'm also gonna look up just the keyword swimming clowns. Because I feel like that's something I need to know more about. Okay, so nothing's coming up. The swimming clowns, nothing comes up. I guess it must be something that I would have to search in newspapers.com or something. Swimming clowns. Oh my goodness. Okay, yeah, sure enough. Headlines from like pretty much like 1900-ish to like the 50s had plenty of mentions of swimming clowns. It was a thing, I guess. Okay, great. Now I need to know, when did water chlorination start? Oh, I want swimming pool sanitation. Okay, if you're looking for something to do, the Wikipedia article on swimming pool sanitation, you could make it better. Because it's a little bit like there's really no history section. That feels important to me. Okay, well that was kind of a dud. The first Olympic Games, well, the modern ones in 1896, included swimming races. I remember like all the results from those first swimming Olympics are really like hilariously slow because they would all do the gentlemanly breaststroke, even though it was very slow. The first known public swimming pool is located in Belmont, Massachusetts, but it doesn't even say what year it opened. Interest in competitive swimming grew following World War I. Okay, I think this article could use a little bit of help. Anyway, I'm coming back. Sorry for that. It makes sense that Moses is going to be the swimming pool guy because remember at Yale, he just couldn't knock it out of the water. Remember how he would one of the most insane things about him is how he was working like 18-hour days, but he somehow made time. He would make his driver like go to the beach, drop him off, and then he would just like go swim out while the limousine is waiting for him. And it would be the middle of the night. That's so funny of him to do. That is one of the funniest scenes in the book, in addition to like the well, there are many funny scenes, but I don't think anything will top the visual of like the kids lining up to dig a hole. But yeah, him in like the dead of night, just like swimming in the middle of the Long Island Sound or whatever. Every water polo gold medalist since 2000 was raised in an area centered in landlocked Hungary. That is a really fun fact. No one, I've never heard that fun fact. Does everyone know that? What's going on in Hungary that's making them so good at water polo? That's amazing. Okay, I'm gonna remember that. I feel like I need to like look into this. Water polo. If there were personal reasons why the mayor wanted to allow Moses his independence, there were political reasons why he had to. The most important, of course, was public opinion and Moses's hold on it. Already predisposed to be friendly toward Moses because he was creator and defender of parks, the city's 13 daily newspapers had that friendship cultivated with customary Moses thoroughness. As always, he went directly to the top, giving newspaper owners pre-opening tours of the new bridges and free passes to them thereafter. inviting them to sail on the Long Island Park Commission's yacht. Ooh. Bathe in the reserved section of Jones Beach, and dine in the private section of the Marine dining room, where he served them lavish helpings of his inimitable charm. Iphigene and Arthur Sulzberger of the New York Times, Helen and Ogden Mills Reed of the Herald Tribune, who never found out about Moses's plan to deceive him into making a contribution to the Yale University Minor Sports Association. Do you remember that? That's a great callback. That was amazing. That was on page 1. And Roy W. Howard of the World Telegram regarded him as a personal friend. He spent many weekends at their summer homes. Moses also lavished attention on top editors. He had easy access to the Herald Tribunes because his Yale classmate Harold Phelps Stokes was one of them. And he used that access. One of the Tribune editors was a dyed-in-the-wool reactionary who saw Bolsheviks in every bush. And Moses helped his vision. Filling the editor's mail with leaflets mimeographed by left-wingers in the WPA to prove that any dissension among WPA workers in the Parks Department was fomented by communists. What? Wow, I need to know more about like the like early Red Scare era. This is just very funny. Okay. The chief editorial writer of the Times was Charles Murs, a Yale graduate who lived in the apartment building next to Moses's. Also, like, to me, it's like, okay, Robert Caro, how do you know that Moses is just sniffing out the communists, or, because he's trying to win over this editor, not because he believes that communism is, I don't know, an active threat on America. Just by happenstance, remarks Joseph C. Ingraham, a Times reporter, and later its transportation editor, who became friendly with Moses. Quote, Moses would be waiting in the lobby of Mers's apartment house many mornings to ask him if he wanted a lift downtown, so he could plant an editorial. And while Moses went to the top, he did not stop there, wining and dining reporters as well as publishers, inviting key ones to his elaborate opening ceremony luncheons, to an annual swimming and dinner outing at Jones Beach, to more intimate and elaborate luncheons at Belmont Lake State Park, to the park department's Christmas party at the Arsenal, and to day-long yacht trips, which often ended with clam and lobster bakes on Fire Island. At all these events, the food was superb. The liquor flowed freely, and so did the charm. The most important newspaper in the city and the country was the New York Times, and Moses had an especially strong hold over the Times. The devotion to parks of the woman who owned approximately 2/3 of its voting stock. Iphigene Ox Sulzberger, the only living child of the imperious little patriarch of the Times, who during the 1920s had purchased key parcels in Saratoga and reserved them for Moses's state park there, had been fighting for years for the expansion and improvement of New York City's inadequate and decaying park system, a fight whose frustration was summed up in one conversation with Tammany Manhattan Park Commissioner Sheehy, who unabashedly told her to her face that until he became commissioner, he had never been in Central Park in his life. What? That's so crazy. When LaGuardia told her that he was giving Robert Moses power over parks, she had been happy, and the adjective had proved inadequate to describe her feelings about what Moses was accomplishing with that power. Elected president of the city's Park Association in January 1935, Iphigene Sulzberger's first official act was to present Moses with the association's annual testimonial award, and as she handed him the illuminated scroll, she said earnestly, Commissioner Moses, you have made us feel that the projects for which we have striven can be realized. She would serve as president until 1963, that's 28 years, heading the Park Association, therefore, for 25 of the 26 Okay, I promise I didn't do the math wrong. But she headed it for 25 of the 26 years that Moses served as city park commissioner. And during all that time, her admiration for him would only increase. In 1963, the association would present him with another illuminated scroll. It closed with the words, "How wondrous are his works, how deep our gratitude." In private, moreover, Mrs. Sulzberger was, if possible, even more adulatory. In 1963, standing by a window in her Fifth Avenue apartment, looking out over Central Park, the gray-haired, dignified woman could tell the author. Oh, I love it when he mentions himself as the author. This is what she said. "There has never been as great a public servant. He was a man of vision, a giant. He saw nature as a whole. I had a feeling that he liked to fight, that if someone just agreed with him, he was disappointed. He liked to beat them. He was a hero of old, always rushing into battle with Excalibur waving above his head. I thought of the Park Association as Aaron and Hur. Do you know who Aaron and Hur, spelled H-U-R, do you know who Aaron and Hur were? They were the soldiers in the Bible who stood behind Moses and held up his arms when he got tired at the Battle of Rephidim, at which Israel prevailed so long as Moses held up his hands. Well, that's how I thought of the Park Association, as upholding the arms of Bob Moses." Not that she always agreed with Moses. Mrs. Sulzberger possessed, years earlier than most urban planners, a very acute understanding that the values of engineers were not compatible with the values for which parks were created. "Engineers are straight-line crazy," she would tell the interviewer. She didn't want the unspoiled wilderness of Inwood Hill Park destroyed by the running of a road on a straight line along its crest. A believer in the old theory that the purpose of parks was primarily conservation, not recreation, although she might not have stated the theory in precisely those terms. She didn't like the idea that Moses's plans required the covering over of so many green spaces with concrete for playgrounds, basketball courts, and other active play facilities, not to mention roads and parking fields. In particular, believing in the preservation of Central Park as a restful retreat from the abrasions of city life, she didn't want so many active play facilities there. "Iphigene gave us many arguments," Jack Madigan said. "And," he added, "some we walked away from." A euphemism meaning they surrendered. Moses probably turned the abandoned reservoir site in Central Park into a great lawn, instead of into the playgrounds and ball fields that he originally wanted there, solely because of Mrs. Sulzberger's feelings. But while Moses may have walked away from some fights with Mrs. Sulzberger, he did not walk away from many. He would not allow, because of his nature, he could not allow anybody, even an individual whose support was so important to him, to criticize his plans. His usual technique with Mrs. Sulzberger was not to walk away, but to walk with, to take her himself, or have Madigan or Andrews take her, on a tour of the area in dispute to try to sell her on his idea of how it should be developed. These walks were planned with care. Madigan took her to Inwood Hill on a weekday when the park was deserted and told her that the public wasn't getting any use of it, guessing correctly that she had never hiked up the steep hill on a weekend and hence had not seen the happy picnickers who crowded it. Sneaky. Madigan also played shrewdly on her sensibilities, which were firmly Victorian. Quote, "I told Iphigene, if you walked up there at night, you were likely to step on a couple, and it might be a good idea to have lights. The headlights from cars, you know, up there. You were likely to step on a couple? Like a couple of people? I don't know what that means. Anyway, and the walks usually worked, particularly since Moses' opponents did not know her well enough to take her on walks themselves and show her their side of the argument, and did not have the facilities or manpower to compile the facts and figures that might have disproved Moses' facts and figures. Moses persuaded Mrs. Sulzberger to persuade the Park Association to elect Andrews, a native Virginian who could be as courtly with women as he could be curt with men. Mrs. Sulzberger says he was a remarkable man. Thereafter, Andrews was someone working for association support. What? Therefore, there was somebody working for association support of his policies from within. Okay, so the park association elects a Moses head named Andrews. Oh, they're calling her a prude. Okay, thank you so much. That is helpful. Mrs. Sulzberger's dedication to the cause of parks was so complete, moreover, that she didn't want to do anything that would interfere dramatically with what Moses was doing, even if she felt he was sometimes wrong. This man was rejuvenating parks at a rate she would never have believed possible. She didn't want him hampered by her disagreement with what she regarded as details. Quote, I never did like the concrete floors on the playgrounds, she would tell the interviewer. But, she would note, before Moses came along, there were no real playgrounds at all. No swings and no jungle gyms. Hardly anything for children to play on, really. Okay, I'm going to read one more very short paragraph. So sincere was Mrs. Sulzberger's dedication to parks and the new park commissioner that this proud and dignified woman even submitted to a public insult, quite possibly the only one she ever received at his hands. The quarrel was based on Moses' plan to turn the site of the demolished Central Park Casino into a playground. Mrs. Sulzberger had allowed herself to be reconciled to the creation of perimeter playgrounds in Central Park by Moses' argument that small children could not be kept out of the park anyway, and their strategic placing of playgrounds next to park entrances would intercept them and confine their destructive energy to the park's edge. She must hate kids. Wow, that's crazy. Let's build a park, but try to dupe the kids into not actually coming inside. She had never thought that Moses would begin to lay concrete in the park's interior. Hearing of the plan for the casino site, she protested publicly on behalf of the Park Association in a letter released to the press on December 23, 1935, in which she stated, it seems to me that in our desire to establish playgrounds, which are sadly needed in the city, we are completely overlooking the rights and needs of the adult population. Central Park will fail to fulfill its purpose if there is no longer space where men and women can have quiet and relaxation. That is a little bit goofy. I'm going to stop there. Page 460. Let's see how I like this chapter. It's really fun. There's like 8 more pages in the chapter, and then the next one is just called Driving. That's fun. Yay. Okay. See you later. Have a good day. It's really nice weather out in New York. I hope it's nice wherever you are. I don't even know where do you guys live? You don't have to say your address, obviously, in a, on the public internet, but oh, Pennsylvania? Not very far. Drew, I feel like I remember you saying you lived in Wisconsin, but I would say I'm only 50% confident because that might have been someone else that said that. Dallas. Okay, whoops. Sorry. Nice. Yeah, yesterday was perfect. 2 days ago, it was like borderline hot. Like I woke up really sweaty. So sweaty that I washed my sheets because I was like, gross. I sweated on them too much. But then yeah, yesterday was like amazing. It was perfect. I've barely been. Texas is probably the state with like the most cultural influence that I have seen the least. Like I spent one weekend in Austin, and that's the extent of my Texas experience. And I feel like I really need to go and at least drive around. And it would be cool to go to Big Bend National Park. I wanted to go there. In college, I had some friends that planned a trip there, but it was right before COVID. So if COVID hadn't happened, maybe I would have gone. Wow, Six Flags is named after the Six Flags that have flown over Texas. You're just like a fount of fun facts today. You need to put these somewhere. Okay, I'm gonna log off. Goodbye.